Hey y'all, Austin here with Outer World Media. Welcome back to another book review. Gonna have a few videos going up today, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the videos. We're gonna start off though with the book review for a book that I'll be honest with y'all, I didn't know anything about it going in. I just knew this was the biggest book or most well-known book by this author, and I figured, you know what better place to start than this, and that was Riders of the Purple Sage by Mr. Zane Grey. Just a little bit of background on this book. I did get this from my local library sale. I have mentioned that on the channel before when I said I was going to read this. I got fortunate enough. I got the uncut and uncensored edition. We'll get a little bit more into that as the review goes on. But just a little bit more background on this. I guess this is the book that started off the Western genre, if you will. I was talking with Dustin Neely in the comments when I was talking about this book previously, and he kind of brought to my attention. He was like, yeah, man, this was, the book that really started it all for the Western genre. This book came out in the early 1900s. And so again, you learn something new every day. I don't pretend to be someone who knows every single thing about every Western book out there. I am a huge fan of Westerns. So anytime I can get any information on, this, I really appreciate it. I appreciate Dustin bringing that to my attention because it gives me a whole new perspective and appreciation for this book, because I knew this book was kind of old, but I didn't realize just how old it was. And I was a little concerned, with it being a little bit of an older book, if the writing would, kind of lose me, and it didn't. Excuse me. But let's get into it. So, what is this book about? Well, this book starts off essentially with a hanging pretty much about to happen. And we're introduced to, two out of the three main characters that this book focuses on. And, we got this confrontation that's happening. We come to find out that the gentleman, who was about to be hung is, not necessarily getting along with the Mormons in this area, because this does take place where it's predominantly Mormons, and then as we find this information out, we're introduced to this mysterious character, Lassiter, who I honestly think is he started off, to be honest with y'all, he started off as a badass character, and by the end, I don't want to say I lost a little bit of interest in him, but he changed in my opinion. But essentially, like I said, we start off with this book, we're about to witness a hanging, then we're introduced in this mysterious character. So Mr. Zane Grey definitely kicks this book off at a high speed, if you will. We come to find out that there's bandits in the area, and one of the characters goes off to try to find them and ends up in this area, and just all this different stuff happens. And I don't want to give it away, even though this book is very, very old. I don't want to give anything away, really. But as the book goes on, we see that the two out of the three main characters, they kind of switch positions, as far as, one kind of starts off as a badass, the other one's kind of a romantic, and then they kind of halfway through the book, they just kind of change positions, and one becomes badass, the other one, kind of falls in love and all this other stuff. And that's really what this book is about. Kind of reading this, it really is a love story at heart, which really surprised me that I enjoyed it this much, being a love story, because that's just not something that I generally like. I mean, if I read a Louis L'Amour book, for example, yeah, I know there's going to be a little bit, of damsel in distress, or, a little bit of a love story, but I'm mainly there mostly for the action. Not saying that this book doesn't have any action in it. It does. It's just not necessarily on the forefront. A lot of stuff happens behind the scenes. When we're led to believe that stuff happens to certain characters, and then later on in the book we find out, okay, that didn't happen, this is what happened. There's a huge plot twist there at the end that I really didn't see coming. I probably should have, but I didn't see it coming. So again, this book was it was awesome. This is definitely one that will definitely probably be up there in the top 5 favorite Westerns of all time for me. I know there is a sequel to this book, The Rainbow Trail, I believe is what it's called. I tried to look for it. I have not been able to find it. I'm going to do some more looking to try to get it. But again, this book, it's just one of those, you could tell that it's an older book by kind of the way it's written, but it doesn't, take you out of the story by the way he writes. When I was little, I remember reading Louis L'Amour books, and Zane Grey, where I came from, was really big. He wrote about the Rogue River and stuff, which was near where I used to live when I was a kid. And so I remember this vividly. I wanted to pick up one of his books, and my grandfather, who had westerns, who kind of got me into him, I asked him, I said, hey, is Zane Grey worth reading? And he said, nah, he writes too slow, you won't like him. And after reading this, I don't believe that at all. I think that he does write at a little bit of a slower pace than a Louis L'Amour book. But granted, this is a thicker book than most Louis L'Amour books, which is not a bad thing. It's just one of those things where, the pacing on this book, even though it is a little bit of a slower book, I could not put it down. And again, I will just keep on praising this book because it was just awesome. I really could not put the book down. I'd catch myself staying up late at night reading this book. I finished it rather quickly for being a book this size. I was a little hesitant, like I said. I hadn't had the best of luck with, a little bit longer Louis L'Amour books. Unfortunately, I still enjoy them, but I just find the pacing a little bit off. With this, that's the weird thing. Like I said, it's, without trying to repeat myself, the pacing, it's not fast, but it's not slow. It's just enough to keep you interested, along the way. And Faceless Book Reviews brought it up to my attention that, a lot of Zane Grey books are on, I believe, what is that? Project Gutenberg, I believe is what it is, where you can download free books to your Kindle, your phone, whatnot. And this is on there, and I would highly recommend getting it. Kind of going now into the uncut and uncensored version. I don't know if maybe it's because, it's 2024. I think this book came out like 1912. I could be wrong on that date. Let me double check here real quick. I do apologize. What was it? 1912, 1913. So it's definitely over 100 years old. But I don't see why this was uncensored and uncut. Being my first time reading it, I wasn't sure what really, I was going to read that would be uncensored or uncut. I didn't see anything in there. Again, it could just be the times. Again, in 2024, I honestly believe a lot of us are desensitized to a lot of things, versus over 100 years ago when this book came out. Now, I know a lot of people, I had some questions, as far as, does it speak ill of the Mormons and all that? I'm not going to delve into that a whole lot. I'll just be frank and say that in this book, the Mormons are the bad guys. I'm not going to say that's the case in real life or anything. In this book, that's just how it is. The Mormons are not the good guys for the most part. There's a couple in here that are good guys. So, and I think he does a great job of that, just showing, even though predominantly in this book, the Mormons are the bad guys, he does have a few people that he shows that are saying, hey, you know what? It's not just that group, it comes down to being, this individual is a bad person, versus this person, is great at heart, has a good heart, wants to help others out. And so I think some people might be thrown off a little bit in the beginning of this book, just by kind of what happens. I would say push through, I promise. He does a good job of bringing it all around and not just showing that, one group is the bad guys. He shows, hey, individuals in this are not as they seem. And that's a great thing, I think, in this book, especially in this day and age. A lot of people, without getting too much into today's society and issues, I think it all comes down to, just because one person is associated with this group does not mean they're a bad person per se. Everybody's an individual as far as that goes. You hope for the best in everybody. And that was there's a couple plot twists in this book. I said there was one big one, but the smaller one threw me off to the point that I was very surprised. I actually put the book down when reading it. So again, I would highly, highly recommend reading this book. It took me a little bit to figure out how to do this review without trying to, upset people and whatnot. But I figured, you know what, just go in, talk about the book, briefly touch on, this subject or this little bit of stuff, but mainly focus on the book. And I think if you can honestly just sit down and read this as a book and not focus on other stuff, I think you will see it is a great book. I promise. This is definitely one. I mean, Zane Grey. Again, in this book, the pacing again, it's not too fast, not too slow. It was just right, and I loved it. I absolutely loved this book so much. This is one I would definitely recommend if you are thinking about picking up a Western book. Pick this one up. It's not graphic. It's not violent. There is some action in there. I mean, it's a love story. It's got everything in here. And again, I love this book. I can't say it any other way. This was a perfect, I don't want to say a perfect Western, but this was a really great Western. I only wish there was just a little bit more action in there, but hey, you know what? For this book coming out in the early 1900s, there's plenty of action in there. Again, I'm going to end this review now because I'm just going to keep talking in circles. But again, go on Project Gutenberg, download this book. I promise you will like this book. I cannot say enough about how great this book was. Set aside your ideology and all this other stuff. When you read this, just pick it up. You will enjoy it. I promise. As always, though, I appreciate every single one of y'all stopping by, and picking up, this book if you do, or even just watching this video. Again, I do greatly appreciate it. Thank y'all.